All right, so I'd like to call this regular board meeting of the Lake Bluff Park District to order. September 21st, 2020. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Beeler?
Here.
Commissioner Greenfield?
Here.
Commissioner Lane?
Here.
Commissioner McHenry? Commissioner Walsh? Commissioner Weber? President Mossberger?
Here. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda, please?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Beeler?
Yes.
Commissioner Greenfield?
Yes.
Commissioner Lane?
Yes.
President Mossberger?
Yes. Statement of visitors. Any visitors out there that would like to address the board on an item that's not part of the agenda? Hearing none, we'll move on. Verbal communications, staff, you're up.
The only, there's a change on the board report. We had one additional women's team, not two, under paddle.
Okay.
We are full though. The women's teams are completely full. And right now, all we're looking for some social members and subs, and we're doing pretty good on the men's side as well.
Great. Obviously, that's what we were hoping. You know, we made the change to lower the overall expenses a bit, and we're hoping that we'd still capture as many people. So that's great that we're full with both sexes. And thank you for the other updates. Dana, it sounds like preschool is a bit of a challenge.
It is. It's you know, we're not totally disappointed. I guess we have half enrollment, but I'm happy to have that. We certainly plateaued. We are now getting some kids back, which is great. We got 4 new students this week. And I only think it's going to go higher because we're proving ourselves to be very safe and having a lot of fun, you know, during this crazy time.
And are you helping out with the daycare stuff as well?
We don't have a daycare. We do have a remote access program, remote assistance program. So that's in the daycare.
Gotcha. Okay.
Great.
Anything else in there, Jim?
I have nothing else unless anybody has any questions.
Jim, I just had one question about the health and fitness report.
Sure.
Are the canceled memberships and memberships on hold included in the numbers above? Or those the numbers above are the active memberships?
That's a great question. I know for the ones that are canceled, it would not be included. I'd have to get back to you on an answer whether the active members or the ones that postponed their membership or pushed it forward. Yeah, I'd have to get back to you. I'm guessing yes, but I can give you, I'll send an email to everybody tomorrow with that answer.
Okay.
Yeah, because we used to have 900 and something members, right?
That's correct. Yes.
Now it's 698.
That's correct.
Okay.
Hey, just to let you know, if anyone's a member of Nextdoor, there was a question posted about where to exercise, and really great comments came in about the Lake Bluff Fitness Center. So I don't know if you want to, and they identified themselves by name, so I don't know if you want to reach out to those folks and maybe use them for some sort of, you know, posting testimonials. But it was really nice to see everybody respond about the distancing, the cleanliness, all the good things that the fitness center offers now.
That's great.
That's great. Yeah. We will be offering a special for the track for parents for basketball. So you'll look for that promotion. We expect high numbers if we can run the basketball program.
And that's still a question as to whether we can run that?
As of right now, we're going to be able to run it.
Okay.
NVA is not running their winter program. Instead, they're doing their fall program where the skate park used to be. And we rented that space out to them. And so we have a great opportunity capturing those same kids to come to our basketball program.
Yeah. Good deal. Noah, anything from you?
No, nothing other than what's in the report.
Okay, great. All right, so moving on to any committees. So it sounds like finance had a, whatever word you used, robust or involved discussion, whatever that was. Do you want to say something here, Paul, or do you just want to wait until we get to your part in the meeting?
Well, I mean, we can do it either way. Some of it is pushed back to later in the agenda. In addition, I mean, the committee had a good discussion of the 2020 projections. Now, Rich has gotten new projections to everybody today, and I don't know how many people have had an opportunity to look at those projections. A number of the points that we discussed will fall into the budget policy discussion.
All right, so let's hold off then until we get to that.
Hold off on that. The 2021 projections we have to do, yeah, but all those issues were discussed in detail.
Okay,
We can look at it later on.
sounds good. Parks and Beach, have you guys had a meeting any time recently? I guess I'm looking at Jennifer.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I had a work commitment and couldn't make the meeting, so I'm going to kind of defer to Noah.
We did. We had a nice, very involved meeting that covered a lot of topics. So just a lot of updates as far as the 1122 sand management project, the retaining wall at the beach as part of our Derma insurance claim is getting done this week, or it started this week, last week. As well as we're still working with Cliff Miller on a contract for the $350,000 project. That's John and I met with him today and covered some topics. So hopefully that continues to move forward. I'm trying to think what else George was at that meeting as well and got a lot of information, I think. So hopefully we're in a good space.
And you had a meeting with North Shore Water Reclamation sometime recently too, right?
It was back in August, yes.
Okay. Well, it's not that long ago.
Relatively recent, yeah.
This is Nikki from the weird phone number. I'm on here as well. The only other thing I think, that was interesting in that meeting, George had a lot to say. He had, marked off a lot of stuff on the beach. And one of the things that I think was really interesting in light of all of the enhancements that we're doing up top at the beach, he was saying, he's super concerned about the debris that's flowing over onto I guess it's the north side of the beach. That could be related to and I can't think of their last name, but the project that they're doing. So when in the discussions that are happening with them on that project, which I don't know if those have happened yet or not, but in those discussions, to try to talk about the debris that's over there as well, and think about that, and just especially in light of what's going on up top, because it's beautiful up top, and then you walk down, there's debris and other things. So
Yeah. Okay. Sounds like you got
The Beans property.
right.
being yes.
Facilities and programs. Emily, we haven't met yet, right?
No, we're planning on October 6th.
Coming up. Okay, so we'll have a report. Friends of the Parks. Jennifer, anything to report there?
No more updates.
Okay. Any other commissioner comments on really anything that's not on the agenda? And I do not have a president's report, so let's move on to approving the minutes. So we need a motion to approve the minutes from August 24th, regular board meeting. Going once?
Motion to approve.
Thank you. Got that, Marcia?
Yeah, who seconded?
I'll second it, Marcia.
Paul, okay. Got it.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Beeler,
Yes.
Commissioner Greenfield,
Yes.
Commissioner Lane.
Yes.
Commissioner Walsh,
Yes.
Commissioner Weber,
Yes.
President Mossberger.
Yes. All right, we have invoices. I didn't see anything in there that I thought needed comment, but someone pipe in if you do. Otherwise, we'll look for a motion to approve the ACH payments for August, and then also approve the invoice schedule for the periods ending September 2nd and September 21st.
Question, page 20, just a broad question. When is the equipment for the fitness center, when's that lease expire? I think I've asked this in the past.
I don't have that answer. I could get that to you.
Sorry,
Okay.
Jim. I think it was a 3 or 5 years. So yeah, Jim, if you can just research that and report back, that'd be great.
Sure.
I believe it's a 3-year.
3 years. And are we 1 year into it pretty much?
Yes.
Something like that. So probably 2
Yes.
more years.
Thanks, Rich. And on page 29, I assume that's a season's worth of platform tennis balls there?
Yeah, I would hope so. I saw that same.
Jeez.
Yes.
I
So I
think
have
I did the math and it was like 900 paddle balls or something like that.
Wow.
That's a lot.
That is
We got a
lot.
good deal if we buy it in bulk.
Oh, for
So
sure. And I actually went on like the Wilson website and they were sold out. So yeah, hey, perhaps you can flip them for a profit.
Yeah, there we go. That's what Jim needs is another project, right?
Yeah, there you go.
No problem.
All right. Thank you, Scott. So looking for motions,
So moved.
or a motion, I guess. And a second?
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please, Marcia.
Commissioner Beeler,
Yes.
Commissioner Greenfield,
Yes.
Commissioner Lane,
Yes.
Commissioner Walsh,
Yes.
Commissioner Weber,
Yes.
President Mossberger.
All right, moving on to finances. I don't know who's stepping in here, John or Rich or Paul?
Well,
Rich, why don't you go ahead?
John or Rich. Yeah.
Well, if be happy to answer any questions that anyone has on the report that we sent out.
So kind of in summary, through the end of, this is August.
August
So-
31st.
So we are behind budget by 200 and what's the number? 268,000 in the rec. Just looking at page 37.
Yes.
I think that's the projection for the year, I believe.
Well, I read that to be through August. That's where we are.
Hold on. Let me get there.
I see on page 39 the change actual is roughly 70,000 to the negative.
For the rec fund?
No, I'm just talking about overall. The rec fund.
The rec fund year-to-date
higher.
activity right now is down, as of August 31st, is down 231,000. I'm sorry, 267. Their
60.
year-to-date activity is minus 231.
Right. And I did not get a chance to open up your projections, but on page 38, I guess you comment that we're looking at to be in the hole by about 270. So
And that's, sorry?
basically staying flat from here through the end of the year.
And actually, it's going to go down a little bit if we, because of tax collections, we feel that the tax collections will, instead of being in the 93% area, the tax collections will be closer to 98 to 100. I mean, as of August 31st, we've collected 52% of the taxes for the year. So there's no reason why we won't be in the 98%. And if that's the case, it takes us down to about we're projecting about a minus 218 in as a district.
Because those tax receipts, do any tax receipts go into the rec fund?
Yes.
They do.
Yes.
Okay.
There's it's a small amount of tax receipts that do go into the rec fund, with the bulk of them going through the debt fund, special rec, and general fund.
And general. Okay. So somewhere the projection is a loss of somewhere between 2 and 250, or I guess I should say an experience of 2 or 250 less than budget.
As of right now, yes.
That's our best projection as of right now.
As of right now, that is correct.
Okay.
There are some differences, Rich, that I found in related to the debt service fund and the capital fund. And well, wait, let me get this back up on my screen. Because what we had from a budget point of view, what we had for 2020, we have this $350,000 that was budgeted for, that we got in as a grant to work on the beach, on access to the beach. So that 350 is in the budget already as revenue. And it was budgeted, it had been originally budgeted to be spent during 2020. It is not in the way, and Rich, we talked about this, I know, but looking at it, I think we need to put that in the budget for this year, just so we can compare apples to apples.
When you say put it in the budget, you're saying put it in the projections for this year?
Put it in the projections for this year as
the expense.
The expense.
Okay, because the revenues were actually brought in last year. The revenue for that, the 350 grant, was brought in last year.
Right, and that's fine, but we still have to recognize the expense.
And that's fine. I just want to make sure that everyone
and
understands
so the expense in the capital budget goes up by $350,000. And the other thing in the capital budget is we've taken in all of the income from the bond proceeds that we just took in of $890,000, just under $890,000. Now, $200,000 we're using as expense for the parking lot. And then there were expenses related to that bond issue of $15,000.
Correct.
So we have to, if we're not going to include those bond proceeds as income to the park district, which I don't believe we should, and Emily, you and I talked about this as well, that those really need to be kept aside for further use, and legally it has to be done that way as well. Then we're knocking off another 600, from a practical point of view, we're knocking off another 675,000 from the capital improvement fund. And that brings the total for the year, total park district, to a loss of just over $254,000.
Which is in the ballpark of what Rich said, right?
Yeah.
But I agree with you, Paul.
This is not relative to budget. This is a net loss of $254,000.
I see what you're saying. yeah, I mean, simply looking at page 39, if you take out the bond proceeds as well as the expense, you know, you get to a loss of 225 or something like that. So that's most of the loss that you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I mean, not a great picture, but I know that we've got staff doing everything they can on the expense side and everything they can on the revenue side. So I think it kind of is what it is, unfortunately. And it sets us back a little on some of those fund targets that we had worked hard to, strive for, but it's kind of a lost year from that respect. So, obviously anything we can do from here through the end of the year to continue to be mindful of expenses, let's do it. I know you guys are already doing that on a daily basis, but it's good for you all to see what the numbers look like, so you've got a good appreciation for, where we are, even with all that hard work that you guys have been putting in. Still not a pretty picture from a finance perspective. So, all right. Anyone want to delve into any of the other pages?
Chris, I just was wondering if he could note on that page 39, if he could add a little footnote saying that bond, so that at least we're aware of it, because it's not even footnoted on that page, on page 39.
Sure. And that's a simple thing to do.
And then also, I think it would be nice, I noticed on the other page, he has it separated, the two debt services, just so like when we look at it, we all can know what it's from. Like on page 40, he has it separated. If we could just do that on the footnote for page 39. It just so that we know where the numbers really are, right? So we know where the debt service is for the racket sports, the golf expense, and then the bond.
Oh, I
So
see.
so we know the funny numbers, right? I just feel like it should be footnoted in both the areas the same. Just so it's easier to read financially for those that aren't financially savvy. Like me.
Yeah, that's an easy change. All right. Any other questions or comments on finances? Do we need to accept these, John, or? I think we usually do that, actually. So can we get a motion to accept the financial reports, please?
Just with the added changes, with the footnotes for the bond especially.
With Emily's added changes.
I mean, especially the bond, I think everybody needs to remember what that money is for. Right?
Why don't you go ahead and motion that then, Emily?
Absolutely.
I mean, would you do like a change to the motion to a motion to accept the report with the addition of the footnote explaining the bond?
Excellent. A second, please.
Second.
Thank you. Marcia, roll call.
Commissioner Beeler,
Yes.
Commissioner Greenfield,
Yes.
Commissioner Lane,
Yes.
Commissioner Welsh. Commissioner Welsh? I think that was a yes. Okay.
Yes.
President Mossberger.
Yes.
And Commissioner Weber is a yes as well.
Oh, sorry, Commissioner Weber.
That's okay, Marcia. No worries.
We need a motion to ratify the purchase card payments.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Marcia, roll call, please.
Commissioner Beeler,
Yes.
Commissioner Greenfield,
Yes.
Commissioner Lane,
Yes.
Commissioner Welsh,
Yes.
Commissioner Weber,
Yes.
There we,
President Mossberger.
yes, thank you. All right, new business. I think A is pretty straightforward, so we need to accept and ratify these appointments. Anyone have any questions on this, or if not, we can just get a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. A second?
Second, Walsh.
Excellent. Marcia?
Commissioner Beeler. Commissioner Greenfield,
Yes.
Commissioner Lane,
Yes.
Commissioner Walsh,
Yes.
Commissioner Weber,
Yes.
President Mossberger.
Yes. B is administrative policy as it relates to check signing and issuance and bill payment. Is the change in here, John, just adding you in as a signer, or is there more of a change than that?
It was putting me in as a signer, and then the amount of 10,000, and then also the superintendent, Jim, at 7,500.
And isn't Noah superintendent too?
He was not on for check signing authority.
Should he be? Would that be helpful?
Probably isn't necessary.
Look at him. Oh, he doesn't want to.
Nope.
Okay, good. So we'll leave that as is. Anyone have a question on that? All right, if we could get a motion then to amend and approve that section of the policy.
So moved. Second.
Great. Marcia?
Commissioner Beeler,
Yes.
Commissioner Greenfield,
Yes.
Commissioner Lane,
Yes.
Commissioner Walsh,
Yes.
Commissioner Weber,
Yes.
President Mossberger.
Yes. Kind of going along with that, the actual check signing and approved signatures over at Lake Forest Bank. So we're looking to add Scott and John to the list of acceptable signers. I wouldn't think.
My understanding is that Scott, I mean, I know, Scott, you filled out the forms, right?
I was just going to say, yes, I have written check or signed the checks during Tom's
Yeah.
interim as executive director.
Scott's in there because when we all signed all those papers from the bank, Scott was signing them. So I assume he was approved by the board then.
So would you need, well, we can ratify it if it's not been approved previously.
So we'll ratify Scott as a check signer, and then we'll approve you as a check signer, John?
Correct.
And Jim, you're already a signer?
That's correct.
Okay, great. All right, so we need a motion from someone to ratify Commissioner Weber as a check signer at Lake Forest Bank and to add John Beeler as a check signer.
So moved, Walsh.
Thank you. Second?
Second, Beeler.
Roll call, Marcia?
Commissioner Beeler,
Yes.
Commissioner Greenfield,
Yes.
Commissioner Lane,
Yes.
Commissioner Walsh,
Yes.
Commissioner Weber,
Yes.
President Mossberger.
Yes. So the next two are, well, I guess we'll treat them separately. So the Open Meetings Act, I don't know really what's being done here, John. If I doubt we need to talk about it, but following
Adding a few new ones in the back there.
on page 67. Okay.
67, yes. Guest services manager and administrative assistant, as well as myself. And Jim was already on there.
He was. Okay. So we just need a motion to amend the administrative policy as it relates to the Open Meetings Act.
So moved.
A
Second.
second. Thank you. Marcia, you're up.
Commissioner Beeler,
Yes.
Commissioner Greenfield,
Yes.
Commissioner Lane,
Yes.
Commissioner Walsh.
Yes.
Commissioner Weber,
Yes.
President Musburger.
Yes. And then we have also an amendment, Freedom of Information Act. You're adding the same people.
Correct.
All right, can we get a motion for that? For amending that policy as well, please?
So moved.
Beeler,
Did you get it, Marcia, the second?
Lane,
Great. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Beeler,
Yes.
Commissioner Greenfield,
Yes.
Commissioner Lane,
Yes.
Commissioner Walsh,
Yes.
Commissioner Weber,
Yes.
President Musburger.
All right, on to number F. Paul, thanks for being patient. The budget timeline. So I'm sure you had a lot of discussion at your committee meeting. John and I have talked about this a little bit as well. I know that Greg, in his short time with us, was pushing to move the time frame up. And I don't think that that is necessarily a bad idea in more normal times. I just think with everything going on this year that it would be aggressive and maybe irresponsible to be trying to push this forward faster than we normally do. You know, there's a lot on staff's plate right now anyway. So does the time frame in here correspond to the old time frame or the more aggressive time frame that Greg was recommending?
This time frame has been amended. What we were looking at the committee meeting was a more aggressive time frame
Than this?
than this. And so this has been pushed back from that. Parts of it have been pushed back from that time frame. I think the idea in both was to have the final board approval by the December board meeting.
We do it in January?
I think normally we've been doing it in January.
Yeah, I think so too.
And, you know, my concern on that, and I think the committee felt similarly, is that this year we have a lot of uncertainty about the budget next year. We'll have a lot of uncertainty probably throughout the year. But we ought to have, it would be helpful to have a clearer idea of what we're expecting earlier, because it could have a major impact on what we're able to do.
Yeah, it's
And I want to just, I was in that meeting as well, and I think that it's one of those things where this isn't a budget that is necessarily going to be adhered to, you know, in complete black and white, right? This is one of those things that's very much a moving target like this year, and everyone should be aware that this is best guess estimates. You know, the purpose of the meeting with the finance committee was to kind of outline a baseline scenario, right? And then a best case and a worst case scenario, just so we kind of have, you know, some bumpers, right? And so I think the budget for the year is definitely more of a guideline in 2021 than something that's going to be set in stone.
Agreed, and likely to be revised, you know, at least once, if not more than once, as we continue to receive more information and more updates. So, okay, so you know, in concept, having a document to approve in December is great. How does staff feel about doing the work that needs to be done by November? Kind of the middle of November, then you'd be done with it, right? Is that realistic?
I think so.
Sorry, who was that? Noah?
Yeah, that was me.
Okay.
I think it's realistic. Jim?
Yeah, I think it's completely realistic.
Okay, great. And John, you may not have an opinion yet because you're too
Yeah,
new,
it's-
but you'll go along with the other two guys.
Yeah, it's you know, I'm been here almost 2 weeks now. That'll be tomorrow. So I'm still getting used to everything, but you know, I know that we've had a lot of our discussion around the finances, and yeah, it's kind of a lot of info from Rich right now and Jim and Noah on that process, and you know, I've had a discussion with Tom Busby. I think we're talking about that maybe a little bit later about some possible part-time work there.
Okay, great.
That would help with that process for sure, and having that, I think, finished up and mostly complete in November.
Okay. Then why don't we go ahead and well, I guess we're not approving this. We're gaining consensus and providing direction. So I guess
There were really, Chris,
yeah, go ahead.
It was the timeline and the budget policy, and I think the budget policy is probably more important than the timeline, because there are several important issues. We discussed them at the committee meeting, and there are several important issues that I think staff needs to have an understanding of to go ahead with the budget. And if I can just run through some of those, and Scott and Noel, please add any that you remember from the meeting. I mean, first of all, as Rich said earlier, for the 2020 year, he's now using a projection of 98% tax collection. We had gone in thinking we were putting in 93%. So the original revenue figures were based on 93% of budgeted collection. So the first thing is we feel that 98% is realistic for 2021, or do we feel that that's too optimistic? I mean, 5% of taxes is a lot of money. So it or whatever amount we might decide to make it, it's a lot of money. The second big thing that Rich had assumed, so as Scott had alluded to, and as we've talked about before, is that the committee had set aside 3 basic scenarios for our budget projections. So scenario 1 was for 2021, we're in stage 4 for 6 months, and then we go into stage 5 for 6 months. And I'm talking about Pritzker, the old state of Illinois stages. Scenario 2 is that we would be in stage 4 for the entire year. Scenario 3 would be that we would go back to stage 3 for half the year and then go into stage 4 for the last 6 months. Now, again, Rich came to us with the staff, Jim and Noah were there as well, and saying they gave us some numbers for all 3 stages, for all 3 scenarios, I'm sorry, but would assume scenario 2 for purposes of creating the budget. So rather than create 3 different budgets, they would go and create one budget based on scenario 2 that we're in stage 4 for the entire year next year. So those are 2 important questions that the board, we think, needs to look at and decide, do we go along with those? Do we feel one or the other of them is being too aggressive? Because staff has to have something to go by, and we can change it in the future, but I think to start out, we need to decide what scenarios we want to go with.
Well, I think we probably, on the budget issue, we need to publish one budget.
Right.
Now, we could have addendums that show other scenarios, as appendices to that budget, but we need to have one scenario and one budget. So seems reasonable to me to use the middle of the road, scenario. What we think is the most likely scenario, and that probably is, being at level 4 for a good part, if not all of next year. So personally, I think that's fine. Sounds reasonable. And, the other scenarios can certainly be shared with the rest of the board. And again, could be documented more formally than that as an appendix if we so choose to do that. Does that make sense, Paul?
I think it makes sense. I mean, I agree. We need one document that we look at. But I also agree that I think having, and again, depending on how much time staff has to prepare this, we looked at if I can backtrack a minute, the committee looked at the 3 scenarios and came up with projections for those. Rich came up with his own projections for those 3 scenarios. And there was quite a bit of divergence between the committee's work and Rich's work. And Rich, I think it's fair that you had said to me that you really took a broad-based picture of this.
That is correct.
And so we weren't interviewing staff and getting every last number. Rich wasn't doing it either. It will be incredibly useful to have that when we can get it. But the projections really are quite different. And I think, and Rich's projections went from an overall loss of 432,000 in scenario 2, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
Scenario 3 is 600 something thousand. And off the top of my head, let me grab it. I don't have it here. Scenario 1 is more optimistic, and I think that's a loss of some 200 something thousand dollars. So we're talking about some pretty significant numbers between the 3. I think it's reasonable to start with scenario 2. I don't know how the board feels about using a 98% tax collection rate. If we think that's reasonable, realistic, or if it's too high.
Do we know yet from Lake County what the collection rate was for the first installment? Because folks that were taking advantage of the 2-month deferral would have had to pay that in early August. Wouldn't we know by now what the collection rate was for the first installment?
As of August 31st, we've received 52% of the taxes that were billed, yes.
Okay, so that's a good sign that the number looks good.
Well, and one other comment I need to make at this point. Remember, we do the budget before the levy is completed. So we're always about 1 to 1.5% under the approved budget. So there's a little bit of room there also.
Yeah, understood. So Lake County and I don't know if they put this out or not, but do they have that information that I just asked for? Would they publish that number for the first installment, or are they not really concerned about the first installment? They're concerned about the total. Because it's not going to be until November that we're going to know what the true collection rate was to capture the people that deferred the second installment for 2 months. So Paul, I don't know that we can answer your question with any definity, until that time. So what number should we use for now? I don't know. We could use 93 or 98, but it's going to be subject to change before the final budget comes through based on what the actual collection was.
I don't know. I kind of feel, I think the 98% for this year is fine because we're well along and it's the first year. To me, it just feels like if we're in stage 4 the whole year, then there are going to be continued financial issues with the residents of the Park District. And I think we may be a little bit down from where we are this year. And you know, maybe it's more, I don't know, taking a more pessimistic look perhaps, but I think maybe it's a little safer to perhaps look at 96%.
Yeah, I don't know that the board's going to answer that for you. I would say just pick a number if you want to be conservative and go with that, and you know, see what it looks like.
Well, didn't Tom recommend 93%? Wasn't it the original number that they used for projections?
Correct.
I mean, that's a pretty low number, but
That's a pretty low number. Yeah, and you know, if we do get to 98% this year, I think going back to 93 would be a bit severe. But yeah, if you want to plan at 95 or 96 for next year, you know, that's being conservative. We hope.
I agree. I feel, and I know that we're doing better than that this year, but I don't think I think it just continue to get tougher.
Right.
Should we say what, 90, 96?
Put 96 in there.
All right, so we're looking at scenario 2 from the actual budget point of view. We really need at some point to have scenario 1 and 3.
Correct.
I think some of the other points that were brought up at the committee meeting, which I think are important to bring up here. First of all, we discussed, and I have to give credit to Emily for this idea, but you know, the staff did a great job this year with the pool, and you came up, you know, Jim, you came up with projections for keeping the pool open and what we could do, and you beat those projections, which
Nice, Jim.
was great.
I know everyone else involved. I mean, what a huge success that was.
Yeah. And I guess we should give an assist to the weather because that didn't hurt either. But
true.
But that was terrific. But one of the points that Emily brought up at the meeting was, should we set program targets similar to that for all of the programs this year? And Dana, you had alluded to some of the difficulties with preschool. I think the last meeting we talked about some of the issues with the health and fitness not getting as many members as we had expected. And so one of the things we brought up at the committee, Emily brought this up, should we have staff set these targets? Should we be looking at that in a more formal, from a more formal point of view than we have done in the past? And I think along with that, there was a feeling at the meeting that we may, when it comes time to look at the budget, we have to look at it probably in a little more critical light than the board has looked at the budget in the past. So that when staff comes up with numbers, I mean, I think, again, looking at some of these projections that have been made, and Rich's projections were which were worse than ours, but that staff, you know, we really have to take a tight look at the projections that that staff comes up with to make sure we're not overly optimistic given the limitations. Sure,
and I would say that, and I'm looking at Jim as I make this comment, that, you know, in the somewhat recent history, the old way of doing the budget was assuming a 3% expense increase and then basically just jack revenue up across the board by 3% to cover the expense increase. And the last couple of years, we've budgeted differently. You know, we've said, okay, not every program or facility is going to generate an increase of 3% over last year. Maybe some do 5, maybe some do 10, maybe some do 0. So I think the budgeting has been more granular than it used to be, which is great going into this year, because I think that needs to continue this year. So I think that they should be in good shape, Paul, to deliver what you're looking for.
Okay, and you know, I think as we get further down the road, that's something that we can continue to discuss and look at. But we all thought, as committee members, we all thought that the idea of having targets was really a good idea, because you know, if things stay the same all year and the projections work, and that's great. Things get better, you know, that would be even better.
Mm-hmm.
But there's certainly a chance that things don't get better, and we end up with some negative surprises, and we need to, you know, potentially be ready to make some difficult decisions.
Well, and I think fitness is a good example of that. So if we are preparing and publicizing the budget that's going to be your scenario 2, that shows that we're in level 4 for all of 2021, I think we'd all agree that we can't just sit and have the same fitness center strategy that we have right now, which basically is we'll open it, we'll enhance our cleaning procedures, and we'll wait until people decide that they're okay using it.
Right.
So we need to do something different. What that is, boy, I hope Jim and Mark can figure that out. But yeah, we need to be doing something different and need to plan differently. So yeah, I'm in total agreement, Paul.
Okay.
Anything else you wanted to highlight from the meeting, or Scott, anything you want to highlight?
No, I think we pretty much, you know, said what needs to be said, and I think we can probably move forward.
Okay.
It's the next point, Chris. Can I just continue into that?
What's the next point?
The getting a finance and accounting specialist.
Yeah.
So this was a point that Greg had brought up initially, and Rich and Tom Busby both were very supportive of this idea, that we really need a full-time finance specialist rather than relying on part-time hours that may not be enough at all times. We've had, there's an additional issue with what we do. Rich is here till the end of the year, and from the beginning we knew that Rich would be available to the end of the year, and that would be it, correct? Mm-hmm. And then there was an issue what we would do about preparing the budget and doing the budget work, given Rich's time constraints, which is 2 days a week, and having, I would say, a more complicated budget this year than we've had in the past typically, and they're therefore more time consuming to come up with. The committee was not as solidly in favor of this idea, and I think several of the committee members had the opinion that we could hire, that it was still going to be a part-time role and we could look for somebody part-time. I think a compromise idea, and something that I think, John, now that you're on board, I think something that we might want to look at for a few months down the road, would be, are there other functions where we are lacking some supervision, some supervisory capacity that can be combined with the finance role and make a very cost-efficient position out of a full-time position for that role. Now, we're not in the greatest financial shape that we've ever been in, and that's a negative, but on the other hand, can we afford not to have proper management and control of this while we're having these difficulties?
And I think that was the crux of the issue. It wasn't the fact that we don't need somebody. It's the fact that, can we afford to do this right now? We have a certain amount in the budget per year that's for this accounting role, and right now it's going to a Rich or a Tom Busby type right now. If we're going to truly be facing another shortfall of $400,000, does it make sense to add another $50,000 to $75,000 into the bucket? I don't know the answer to that, but it's something that the board, should discuss.
One of the things we had talked about at the committee level, Rich is here now and is available the 2 days a week till the end of the year. Tom Busby has his hours renewing on October 3rd, and we thought we could then add Tom to the mix, at least, that during the budget process, when we would otherwise not have enough time to do the regular financial management work plus do the budget work, that it would be worthwhile having both Tom and Rich on board, each one on a part-time basis. Now, John, the question is, what is Tom's attitude about coming on?
Yeah, I mean, I have met with Tom last week and talked to him about, doing some, potentially coming back. He actually technically still an employee of the Park District. He just ran out of hours, so he stopped working. There was some interest. He said he's also been approached by another Park District about a different project there, and he's meeting with them again this week to discuss that and getting back in touch with me this week. But there was some interest on his part in coming back to assist and work through the budget process here.
I think, to me, part of the issue that we have to look at is, for example, Tom, John, you had said that Tom was planning on moving to Minnesota or some.
He's discussed that. He wasn't very interested in a long-term commitment. When Greg had mentioned, well, maybe you can get Tom for 1 or 2 year commitment, and he wasn't really too receptive to that idea. So he said he also doesn't like, he's not looking forward to working over the summer with his, new place in Lake Geneva, his condo. So, I think he was looking at, a little bit more of a shorter term, a role.
I think it's something we have to think about, and I think it's something we have to seriously consider. We might, potentially, if we get Tom back through the end of the year or through January or whatever, to get the budget process herded through, in addition to Rich. But I think the problem is, if we keep losing people, I mean, it's not very good from a continuity point of view to continually having to run through people to handle the finances. We've been extremely fortunate that Tom had the experience or came on with us, and when we needed him as interim executive director, he was there. Rich has worked for the Park District in the past, so he had the background. We're running out of people who've worked for the Park District who can come in and do the job.
So I don't think we're going to decide this tonight, but I do think it's a good topic for all of us to be thinking about. We'll know more from Tom in the next couple of weeks. So by the next board meeting, we'll know whether that is a potential avenue or not. Big picture, I think that we should have a full-time finance person. I think the timing now is unfortunate, and I just have a really hard time adding, you know, to use Scott's number, another $50,000 or $75,000 of expense at a time when we're projecting to lose potentially $400,000 or $500,000. So how important is the finance person? You know, it's kind of a zero-sum game. So if you think the finance person is extremely important, you know, we don't have a lot of fat in our staff right now, do we, Jim? You know, I don't know where that comes from, but I think adding that onto the budget is another expense right now. It just really doesn't work. I'd have a hard time with that. But you know, let's all think about it, and that's just my opinion. I may be the minority opinion, but you know, I do agree long term that we would benefit from having more stability in that role and more consistency. I just think the timing is tough right now. Anyone else have a comment tonight on that, or should we all, you know, kind of think about it and report back at the next meeting?
I think I tend to side with what you're thinking, Chris. You know, that we're at such a deficit, to add to it seems like a lot. You know, we want to have more money for this person to manage, not less. And so, yeah, it seems worrisome to me at this point, you know, when we have people that, you know, I think can get us through where we're at.
Well, that's the issue, Nikki. While we have people who can get us through where we're at, we're okay. But we may not have those people very long.
Correct. Correct. All right, anything else on that topic?
One last finance-related topic,
Yep.
and Rich also has told me about this, but we have a capital assessment due to the NSSRA of just over $127,000. And again, it's something that I don't think we have to decide today, but they've given us 3 periods. Is that correct, Rich?
Yes, that's correct. Three periods.
When they would like us to commit to making that payment. And so we will have to look at that in the coming, you know, couple of weeks, I guess, and come to some decision whether we want to fork out that money this year or do it next year.
What
It's
are
in
the
the
3
budget
periods?
for this year.
Sorry, what are the 3 periods? Is it, you know, deferring a portion over several years, or is it all to be
No.
collected by next year?
John, I think you have the 3 dates in front of
I
you. don't
do.
you?
Yeah, it's the first option would be December, between December and February. The second option would be between March and May. And the third option would be between June and September. So those would be and they didn't, they are asking what our preference was for paying that. That's towards the facility. It's $127,584.
And do we have an update from them on the building? Are they moving ahead with the same plan they had before? Is that delayed because of the COVID stuff going on?
It sounded as if they're moving forward. I did a Zoom meeting with them last week, and I have an orientation at their location this week, so I should be able to get a little bit more information. One of the things that I guess Rich and I talked about this a little bit, we thought if this is asking for our preference, it's easy enough to say they've already collected some money. They sent out a sheet with that information, but there, it's easy enough. Our preference would be, and just at least Rich and I talking, would be that June to September, because that installment of taxes would come in, that our January to April is a low cash period before the taxes come in. So, that was kind of our thought as a recommendation.
So I would tell them that.
Okay. That's, we can do that.
Paul, don't you agree? Seems to make sense.
It seems to make sense.
Yeah.
I mean,
All right.
Money is in the budget for this year, so the budget figures we've been looking at, but it's a question of taking it from this year, putting it in next year.
Correct.
I mean, we know we have to spend it. We're committed to spending the money, so.
Right. Yeah, see if that'll work, John.
Okay.
All right, Paul, thank you for all of that.
Thanks to the committee.
I can see why you had a healthy committee meeting. Probably a long one. Moving on to new business H, Heather Kerr joining the Park and Beach Committee. That's great. We need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Great. A second?
Second.
And a roll call, Marcia.
Commissioner Beeler,
Yes.
Commissioner Greenfield,
Yes.
Commissioner McKendry,
Yes.
Commissioner Lane,
Yes.
Commissioner Walsh,
Yes.
Commissioner Weber. Weber. Let's see. Oh,
Yes.
President Mossberger.
Yes. Written communications, I didn't see any. John, anything there to share?
No, I don't have anything.
Okay. All right. So unless anyone has anything else, we'll look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
A
Second. Second. Lane.
That was Emily, right?
Yeah.
Roll call, Marcia?
Commissioner Beeler,
Yes.
Commissioner Greenfield,
Yes.
Commissioner McKendry,
Yes.
Commissioner Lane,
Yes.
Commissioner Walsh.
Yes.
Commissioner Weber,
Yes.
President Mossberger.
Yes.